Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock Pacific time, so I'm going to get us started and start to welcome people to the 2023 Northwest Regional Invasive Species and Climate Change Symposium. Thank you for being here. I know people are still coming in to the meeting space, so I want to give people a minute to sort of get settled and oriented to what we're doing today. I'm Nicole DiCrepio. I'm the director for the Northwest Climate Adaptation Science Center. I'm located in Corvallis, Oregon, and I'm welcoming you all on behalf of this Risk Symposium organizing team. We've got folks from the USGS, Environmental Science Associates, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the University of Washington Climate Impacts Group, who you'll meet throughout the symposium, who have been totally vital to making this symposium come to life today. We have over 300 registrants for the symposium, so we're just super excited. We know there's a lot of interest and enthusiasm about looking for solutions and understanding better this nexus between invasive species and climate change. So again, welcome. And we'll get going. Let me just give you a little bit of background on the risk management network overall. So you are here at the Northwest Risk Symposium, but the Northwest Risk is part of a larger risk network that we now have spanning the United States. We really started out in the Northeast. It was our colleagues in the Northeast region that put together the initial risk network. And some of them will be hopefully joining us on the symposium today and tomorrow. From there, we saw that was such an incredibly powerful way of getting managers and scientists together to think about this nexus of invasive species and climate change, and started to export their great idea to other areas of the U.S. So we now have the Northwest, the North Central, Pacific Islands, Southeast, and there are other regions that are starting to establish their own risk networks as well. So we are coordinating as much as possible with our neighbors across the country, and in our bordering in Canada and Mexico as well. Really quickly, you'll hear a little bit more about the risk network from Emily Fusco, our coordinator, in a moment. But just to give you a sense of what the risk network is, and hopefully you all are, if not already involved, will become more involved after this symposium. But we're really a partnership of regional agencies and organizations that are working to understand and address that nexus of climate change and invasive species and pathogens. We work really broadly with federal, tribal, state, and local agencies to integrate climate change and adaptation science with invasive species prevention, early detection, control, and monitoring activities. And we're very focused on the-ground management, conservation, and research needs, especially in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and British Columbia, and then our neighboring states and provinces. I want to give a big shout out to the Northwest Risk Advisory Team. We have a really active and engaged group of people who have been helping us for the last couple of years as we've stood this network up and have figured out what it is we want to be and how to be inclusive and really bring value in the form of different products that you'll hear again more about from folks as we go through the next 2 days. I'm going to take a moment to talk about the Climate Adaptation Science Centers, which like I said, I'm the director of the Northwest Climate Adaptation Science Center. The CASCs, as we refer to them, are very large parts of all of these risk networks across the country. And I wanted to just share with you kind of how we approach the work that we do and what it is that we do. So the CASCs, if you're not familiar with them, are Department of the Interior entities that are run through the U.S. Geological Survey. But we're a shared partnership between the federal government and universities, and in many cases, nonprofits and tribal organizations within each region. So you can see the breakout of all the CASC regions across the United States here. And our mission is really to deliver science to help fish, wildlife, water, land, and people adapt to a changing climate. For the Northwest Climate Adaptation Science Center, we are, as I said, a federal university tribal partnership, and you can see the map here. We cover Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Western Montana. And we have the USGS, I'm USGS, and I'm on the USGS side. And then we have our consortium, our consortium of universities and tribal organizations. The University of Washington is our host university. So our colleagues at the Climate Impacts Group are hosting us. And this is so fresh, I didn't even have time to update this slide, but we have some new members that we've just added, really excited about adding Northwest Indian College, the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians, and Portland State University to our consortium. And so we collectively are looking for ways we are able to do research, we're able to do training and capacity building, we're able to do trainings in helping managers incorporate climate change information and climate adaptation into the work that they do. A lot of what we've done in the past is started at the climate downscaling and uncertainty analysis. We've moved over time into hydrologic modeling and by looking at biological impacts of climate change. But we're really centered now in looking at climate adaptation, testing climate adaptation strategies, understanding what climate adaptation success looks like, things of that nature. Our overall approach, we do fund science, we do fund research, but we have a different kind of approach to it. And the approach is really what makes us, I think, so unique, is that we're conducting everything we do, not just our research, but everything we do in close partnership with our natural and cultural resource managers in the region. So we're collaboratively identifying the problems, researching, analyzing, collecting data, thinking about the products from start to finish with our management partners, and disseminating, interpreting, training, coaching, working on technical aspects of problems as much as we can with our partners. So if you're not familiar with us, I encourage you to check out our website, northwestcasc. Maybe Darcy can put it in the chat. I don't have it off the top of my head, but we take a look at our website, and we'd love to be more involved with you if your work aligns with us and you're thinking about climate adaptation and how to do that work in the Northwest. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited about the next 2 days. I am going to turn it over now to my colleague, Emily Fusco. She's the Northwest Risk Coordinator, and she's going to take us through our next session. So thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks so much, Nicole, for kicking us off today. I'm going to jump in here to the next presentation. All right, does everything look okay?
Looks good.
Great. So as Nicole said, my name is Emily Fusco, and I am the coordinator of the Northwest Risk Management Network. In the next 15 or so minutes, I'm going to do two things. So first, I'm going to give all of you a quick rundown of the event today. And then I'm going to give you all a brief overview of the Northwest Risk Network and the kinds of resources and events that we offer. And then also talk about some new initiatives that we have starting up that you may be interested in participating in. So first, all of you that are here, I think we have, over 100 people already signed on. Congratulations, you did the hard part, which was remembering to register and clicking the right link to join our event. So now that you're here, I want to point out a couple of important ways that you can interact with the event speakers and panelists today. So the first thing that you can do is use the chat feature. So you can use the chat feature to send questions to the speakers and the symposium organizers. And you can send these questions at any time during the event. And then during the sessions, the moderator will pull questions from the chat to ask the speakers during the question and answer sessions, and they'll get through as many questions as time will allow for each of those events. You can also use your reactions button. So you can click on that and send things like thumbs up or applause during the presentations. This is a really great way. I see some thumbs up coming already. So this is a great way to let folks know when, maybe a particular point resonates with you, or you can let the speaker know that you really like what you're learning by using something like that. And if you don't see those buttons on your Zoom screen, what you can do is hover your mouse over the bottom of the Zoom window and they may pop up for you. You may also see instead a button that says more. And if you click on that, you might find those options to chat and react there. You can also change the way that your screen is set up by clicking on the view button in the top right of your screen. You can use this to move in and out of full screen mode, for example, or change from gallery to speaker view, that kind of thing. You can also change the way that you see other people's reactions. So there's 3 choices for the way you view those reactions. One is full, and so the reactions in that mode from other people, they'll float up kind of from the bottom right of your screen. You can also put it on compact mode, so others' reactions will appear, but they don't float up on your screen and they disappear pretty quickly. But if you're finding those reactions distracting or you just don't want to see them for any reason, you can also choose the hidden mode. And when you choose that, you won't see other people's reactions at all. So going over what is going on today, so keeping track of all the things that we have going on over the next few hours, you can use your current Zoom link to access all of the talks and panels for today. So after our opening session, which we're going through right now, we'll have a series of 4 talks related to cross-boundary work. And then we'll have a panel and discussion about some tools that can help us break down those barriers between science and application. Once that panel's over, we're going to take a break at noon before moving into our virtual networking session. The networking session does require a separate registration and Zoom link. So if you want to attend that and you haven't registered yet, you can still do so on our website. And you can see also on our website a full detailed agenda and the speaker bios for today. And I'll put links to those in the chat shortly. Okay, so now that we've gone through all the housekeeping, let's get into this. Why invasive species and climate change? Why do we need an entire symposium, let alone an entire risk network, to address these topics at the intersection of invasive species and climate change? And so we really expect that the way we understand and manage invasive species is going to change in some really important ways as our climate changes. And so this graphic comes from a fact sheet created by our colleagues in the North Central Risk Network that outlines some of these changes. So first, we might expect to see that some extreme events and disturbance events like fire can create new opportunities for invasion. And that's because a lot of invasive species are very disturbance responsive. We have also seen that non-native and invasive species are really good at taking advantage of these longer growing seasons that we're seeing compared to native species. So they might gain even more of a competitive edge as our warm seasons lengthen. There's also some evidence that suggests that in some situations, our current methods of control, like our pesticide use, might be less effective as atmospheric CO2 increases. So invasive plants do a really good job of taking advantage of that increased CO2 to grow even faster and produce even more biomass. And then we also expect to see changing patterns of human land use with climate change. So things like changes to recreation patterns, people may be recreating more in water at different times of years, at higher elevations, or just in new places altogether. Those kinds of changing patterns can result in new introduction pathways. And then we also expect to see invasive species shift their ranges as climate changes. So as new suitable climate becomes available in new places, the invasive species that we already have here are going to be moving around a bit. So they might start showing up in places that we might not have expected to see them before. So how is the risk network going to help with all of these things? The risk network the goals of the risk network is to reduce the joint effects of climate change and invasive species by synthesizing relevant science, sharing the needs and knowledge of managers, and building stronger scientist-manager communities and conducting priority research. And as Nicole just mentioned, the Northwest Risk Network is part of this larger risk network, and it was co-founded by our colleagues in the Northeast. And what they were hearing there from the invasive species managers in that region was that they recognized that climate change was going to affect or was already affecting how they might need to conduct their management activities. And they were really interested in incorporating climate change into their management and planning, but they didn't really have the information that they felt they needed to do that effectively. And so the risks were created in direct response to that need, that need that they had or we have to bridge the gap between what we know about invasive species and climate change and what we're doing about it on the ground. So today there are 5 risk networks across the US. We're standing up more in new regions. We're also working with Canada to develop their own risk network. In the US, most of these networks are at least to some extent affiliated with their regional climate adaptation science center. In the Northwest, we are working very closely with our CASC and Nicole and the CASC crew over there. And all of the risks also work together on what we call like cross-risk activities. So all of these risks are always in touch and we share resources and ideas across the risk networks. And so for any of you that are coming from outside our Northwest region, you can also check out what kinds of resources your regional risks have. So the Northwest Risk was started in 2021. It works closely with the Northwest CASC, and it's funded in part by the Northwest CASC and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In our region, we have our core team. That's me, Nicole, Lindsay, Jen, and Rachel, and you'll be hearing from all of us off and on throughout the week. And then we also, or throughout the rest of the week, and then we also have an advisory team with more than 20 reps from across research and management agencies. And so these folks help direct our regional priorities and what the risk network brings to you. At the beginning of each year, our advisory team members renew their commitment to being part of this team, and we also consider bringing on new members every year. So if you're interested in serving as part of the advisory team, let us know. You can send us an email and we'll send you more information about how to get more involved. The Northwest Risk offers a number of resources and programs. One of the major resources from the Northwest Risk is these online events like the Symposium. And we try to design these events based on our network interests. So some of you might remember a couple of months ago, there was a pre-symposium survey that was sent out. We had about 70 respondents to that survey, and we used the results to inform what kinds of topics we would bring to this event. So you can see in the graph on the right that we focused our talks and sessions based on the things that you all said you were most interested in learning about. So for example, tomorrow we'll have 2 panels dedicated to how folks are incorporating climate change into their management actions. And then on the other hand, we decided to forego dedicating a lot of time to carbon consequences, for example, because fewer folks said they're interested in that. So maybe that's something that we'll come back to down the road when folks feel like they need that information. So through these kinds of informal surveys, you can have a direct say in the kinds of programming we provide. And when you see an opportunity to provide feedback, please take that opportunity. It's really useful on our end so that we're able to get you all the things that you need. In addition to Symposia, we also offer webinars. So many of you probably attended our webinar that we co-hosted with the Oregon Invasive Species Council in June. If you missed that, you can find a recording on our website. There are 2 main types of products that fall into our kind of science synthesis category that we provide. One of those is research summaries. And so these are just kind of quick summaries that summarize relevant scientific journal publications with kind of a management focus. In the Northeast region has a huge library of these. So I would recommend looking at the Northeast region's website, especially to see what kinds of resources they have there. And we're working on building up our repository of these research summaries in the Northwest as well. We also have what we call management challenges. So these are 2-page fact sheets about high priority invasive species and climate change topics. The one shown here on the right is a management challenge about the emerald ash borer and its appearance in the Northwest. So this is kind of created in response to that first sighting that we had in our region. And we plan to create more of these types of resources over the next year. We also have a couple of new initiatives that we'll be excited to launch in the coming months. So first, we want to start working directly with researchers in our network to develop these research summaries based on published work of theirs within our network, our larger network. We also would like to work directly with managers in our network to start documenting and sharing y'all's experience incorporating climate change into your invasive species management. So if you think you'd be interested in kind of working in either of these areas or sharing some of your work in these areas, just keep an eye out for future mailings from us, and we'll provide you with some instructions about how to get involved. And that's going to be kind of rolling out and getting started up here in the next several months. The risk networks do also conduct original research. So, for example, this figure comes from a manager needs assessment that was conducted in the Northeast, and it shows what kinds of information delivery system invasive species managers found most useful. We've also published some papers related to things like translational invasion ecology, invasive plant regulatory lists, just to name a few examples. A lot of these projects so far have been led by folks out of the Northeast, but we do have some upcoming projects that are really an effort from folks across the risk network. So that includes a couple of research efforts on invasive species and climate change terminology, and then also a report that compares our manager survey results from across the risk regions. You can find all of these resources, including all the published works, reports, symposia, and webinar recordings on the risk websites. So the first website listed there goes to a landing page where you can then link out to any of the regional risk networks. The second there, the nwrisk.org, that brings you directly to the Northwest Risk website. So you can go to either of those places and find a lot of these resources. You can also contact us using the Northwest Risk email. So that's that Gmail right there. Or you can just email me directly at that UW email address. If you are not already on our mailing list, you can go to our website and sign up. That is absolutely the best way to stay involved and aware of what the network is up to.